Keanu Reeves was sitting alone at a corner table in a small McDonald's on a sunny afternoon. The gentle hum of conversations filled the place, with kids laughing in the play area, and the comforting aroma of fries lingering in the air. Wearing a simple black t-shirt and faded jeans, Keanu was savoring a rare moment of solitude, away from the blinding spotlight. He absent-mindedly stirred his coffee, his mind lost in thought, when a small, hesitant voice pulled him back to reality. He glanced up and saw a young boy, no more than 5 years old, standing next to his table. The boy's messy blonde hair framed his pale face, and his tiny hands clutched a broken toy car so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Keanu offered a gentle smile, but the boy's eyes remained fixed on him, wide and trembling. Before Keanu could speak, the boy leaned closer, his lips almost brushing Keanu's ear, and whispered something so faint it was barely audible. Instantly, Keanu's face drained of color, and his hand shook as he pulled out his phone. 911, what's your emergency? Came the operator's voice as Keanu forced himself to stay calm. He couldn't afford to show fear. Not now. I'm at McDonald's on Sunset Boulevard, he said quietly, keeping his eyes on the boy. There's a situation here. Please send help. The boy's small body quivered as he glanced over his shoulder, and Keanu's gaze followed. A man in a crisp gray suit was sitting at a nearby table, his phone pressed to his ear, but his eyes never left the boy. The cold, calculating glare sent a shiver down Keanu's spine. Trying to mask his concern, Keanu gently rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. "It's okay, buddy," he whispered. "You're safe with me." But as the man in the suit shifted in his seat, something about his presence felt dangerously wrong. Keanu's instincts screamed that there was more to this story, something darker than he could have imagined. The boy's whispered words replayed in his mind, sending a cold dread through his veins. Whatever was happening, he knew he couldn't let the boy out of his sight, not until help arrived. Keanu kept his composure, though his mind raced with possibilities. The boy clung to his broken toy car, his small hands trembling. Keanu offered a reassuring nod, trying to keep the boy calm. Just then, the man in the suit glanced their way again, his jaw tightening as he ended his call. He stood up slowly, adjusting his jacket with deliberate movements, and made his way toward them. Keanu remained seated, his expression relaxed, but his senses on high alert. The man stopped just a few feet away, forcing a tight-lipped smile. "Sorry if my son's bothering you," he said, his voice smooth but cold. "We were just leaving." The boy stiffened, instinctively stepping closer to Keanu, his fingers tightening around the toy. Keanu met the man's gaze calmly. "He wasn't bothering me," he replied with a casual smile. "We were just talking about his car. Looks like it's seen better days." The man's smile faltered, and for a split second, something darker flickered in his eyes. Keanu didn't miss it. "That's right," the man replied, forcing his tone to remain pleasant. "It's broken. I'll get him a new one. Come on, Ethan." He reached out to grab the boy's arm, but Keanu subtly shifted his position, blocking his path. "Hey, maybe give him a minute," Keanu said evenly, his voice calm but firm. "Kids get attached to things, you know." The man's jaw clenched, but before he could respond, a waitress approached, sensing the tension. "Everything all right here?" she asked, casting a wary glance at the man. Keanu offered her a reassuring smile. "Yeah, just talking. Could you bring the little guy a milkshake?" She nodded, giving the man a suspicious look before heading back to the counter. The man's fake smile disappeared completely, and his eyes hardened. "You really shouldn't get involved," he muttered under his breath, his voice barely above a whisper. Keanu didn't flinch, his gaze unwavering. "Sometimes kids just need someone to listen," he replied calmly. The man glanced over his shoulder, as if checking for something, then leaned in closer. "You're making a mistake," he hissed. Keanu didn't respond, But his instincts were screaming that this man wasn't just some frustrated father. There was something sinister here, and whatever the boy had whispered to him was far worse than he'd initially thought. Keanu tightened his grip on his phone, knowing the police couldn't get here fast enough. Keanu maintained his calm demeanor, but his mind was racing. He needed to buy time. The boy, Ethan, was practically glued to his side now, and Keanu could feel the fear radiating from him. The man in the suit, clearly agitated, glanced around the restaurant as if calculating his next move. Keanu lowered his voice and leaned closer to Ethan. "Hey, buddy, do you know that man?" Ethan hesitated, his eyes welling up with tears. Slowly, he nodded. He took my mom," the boy whispered shakily. "Said if I tell anyone, he'll hurt her." Keanu felt a surge of anger boil within him, but he kept his expression controlled. He gave Ethan a comforting squeeze on the shoulder and spoke softly. "You're doing great. Just stay right here with me." As he subtly scanned the room, Keanu noticed the waitress returning with the milkshake. She placed it on the table, giving the man a wary glance. Keanu caught her attention and gave a slight nod, signaling that something was wrong. The waitress hesitated before stepping away, pulling out her phone as she walked toward the counter. The man stepped closer, lowering his voice to a harsh whisper. "You really want to play hero here, huh? You don't know what you're getting into." Keanu leaned back casually, his expression unfazed. "I'm just making sure the kid's okay," he replied calmly. Suddenly, the man's phone buzzed, and he quickly checked the screen, his face growing tense. Keanu noticed how his hands shook as he put the phone away, trying to mask his frustration. Just then, Ethan tugged at Keanu's sleeve and whispered, "He's scared of the police." Keanu's mind clicked into place. Whatever this man was involved in, it was big and illegal. He subtly glanced at the entrance, hoping to see the authorities arrive any second. Meanwhile, the man forced a smile again, clearly trying to regain control. "Listen," he said, his voice strained. "Let's not make a scene. Just let me take the boy, and we'll be on our way." Keanu's jaw tightened, but he kept his tone even. "Sorry, can't do that. The kid doesn't seem too eager to leave with you." The man's face hardened, and he moved to grab Ethan's arm. In a swift, fluid motion, Keanu intercepted his hand, gripping his wrist firmly. "Back off," he said quietly, his voice like steel. The man froze, and for a split second, fear flickered in his eyes. Keanu didn't let go, his gaze unyielding. Just then, the faint sound of sirens cut through the ambient noise of the restaurant, growing louder with each passing second. The man's face drained of color, and he instinctively tried to pull away, but Keanu didn't loosen his grip. "Looks like you're out of time," Keanu muttered, his eyes never leaving the man's. The sirens grew closer, and the tension in the restaurant thickened. The man yanked his arm free and took a step back, trying to compose himself, but his hands trembled visibly. Ethan stayed glued to Keanu's side, his small hand gripping his shirt, refusing to let go. As the sirens drew nearer, the man's confidence crumbled, his fake composure giving way to raw panic. He shot one last glare at Keanu before abruptly turning and heading toward the exit. Keanu remained rooted in place, his protective stance unwavering as he kept Ethan close. The boy was still trembling, but he seemed to draw comfort from Keanu's presence. Just as the man reached the door, two police cruisers skidded to a halt outside, red and blue lights flashing. 4 officers quickly stepped out, hands on their holsters. The man froze, visibly hesitating before attempting to look nonchalant. Keanu gave Ethan a reassuring nod and whispered, "Stay right here." One of the officers entered the restaurant, immediately locking eyes with Keanu, who gave a slight nod toward the man at the door. "That's him," Keanu said calmly. The officer approached the man, his tone firm and authoritative. "Sir, we need to ask you a few questions." The man forced a nervous smile. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked, trying to sound casual. But his shifting eyes betrayed him. "We got a call about a potential abduction," the officer replied, not lowering his guard. The man scoffed, shaking his head. "That's ridiculous. He's my son. We were just having lunch." Keanu stepped forward, his voice steady. "The boy said you took his mother and threatened him. He's terrified. You might want to look into that." The officer glanced at Keanu, then at Ethan, whose wide, fearful eyes spoke volumes. As the officer called for backup to secure the man, another officer gently approached Ethan, crouching to his level. "Hey there, buddy. Can you tell me your name?" Ethan hesitated, looking up at Keanu for reassurance. Keanu gave him a small smile and nodded. "It's okay. You're safe now." Taking a shaky breath, Ethan whispered, "Ethan Carter." The officer nodded gently. "And where's your mom, Ethan?" Tears welled up in the boy's eyes as he pointed toward the man. He hurt her. She's at home. He said no one would believe me." The officer's face hardened, and he gestured to his partner. "We need to check the residence immediately. Possible domestic violence situation." Realizing his plan had unraveled, the man bolted for the door. But before he could take 2 steps, Keanu moved with surprising speed, blocking his path and grabbing his arm. The man struggled, but Keanu's grip didn't waver. Within seconds, the officers were on him, forcing him to the ground and cuffing him. As the man was escorted out, cursing under his breath, Ethan clung to Keanu, his little hands still holding the broken toy car. Keanu crouched down, his eyes gentle. "You did great, buddy. You were really brave." Ethan managed a faint smile, wiping away a tear. "I just want my mom to be okay." Keanu gave his shoulder a comforting squeeze. "We'll make sure she's safe. You did the right thing by speaking up." As paramedics arrived and police prepared to escort Ethan to safety, Keanu couldn't help but feel a surge of pride for the little boy who had found the courage to ask for help. He knew that, in that moment, he had made a real difference. Not just by being there, but by listening when it mattered most.